The reason why in online solutions is the fact that they felt examination was highly secured and didn't want to expose examination-related processes to the high rates of exposure when they were not yet ready. So in all the solutions that we are deploying, you would find us paying a lot of attention to issues of security, to issues of confidentiality, and we are using a mix of options to ensure that even if you pick up our content along the line electronically, it would not be of much use to you. So we are building solutions that takes into account the work we do and the stakeholders that we represent. With the new normal and the experiences and what we are learning from it, we know that we need to be reskilled in areas that we hitherto did not have. And so some of the areas that we would find useful going forward as we continue to deploy online solutions would be capacity to do IT audits, both especially at the back end, so that when they are when something goes wrong, we can track and be able to pin it down to where it happened and improve on our security. We would also need some skills to be able to focus for skills required in the future market. Not too long ago, we did a lot of curriculum review and development, and the COVID-19 experience is creating a very big hole in some of the work we have done because of the need for certain types of skills that are now emerging, especially digital skills. And so we would need some other capacity to give us also strength in developing online instructional design. We would need skills to be better at developing exam and assessment related online content. And these are issues that we would be taking for. Blended learning solutions should promote skills enhancement and not skills dilution. In addition, the existing IT culture and workforce capacity are important factors we are looking at in our quest for digital transformation. Ideally, all our institutions of higher education must have free wireless communities. This reality is yet to be achieved in many of our institutions across the continent. Again, many of our countries and communities are largely rural, and here the infrastructure for reliable internet connectivity does not exist. The financial capacity for the candidate to afford the enablers, example, the laptop, the data, are still a big barrier that we must continue to avert our mind to as we stream in online and offline. Here we would need policies to ensure that we do not invest heavily in solutions that will by themselves become inaccessible to the people they are meant for. And so we have to, as a community, when we are developing our solutions, to be mindful of our context and with respect to the institution, but also with respect to the clients who would be receiving services from us. In conclusion, COVID-19 may have disrupted our normal. The pandemic has forced some of our institutions to make emergency decisions on digital solutions. In keeping true to the vision of the AU Commission, we must not only consume, but also be mindful of the need to train people who can also produce technologically driven solutions. We must do all this with quality, capacity, and planning in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sheila Nabuama, for that insightful presentation. I think you made mention of some key things And one thing that I picked, which I liked, had to do with the fact that your institution actually started the attempt to go digital 4 years ago. And I'm sure that for other institutions that have not even started, when the COVID started or when it came, I'm sure most institutions also started going this way because that was the only way that we could survive given the current situation. You also mentioned that you highlighted the importance of collaboration in that at some point you collaborated with WAEC, mainly to help build confidence and to also help in terms of staff strength, staff gaining some skills here and there, so that when your institution was even now ready to go digital, some confidence and some basic skills were there. So that is very important. You also made mention of moving to project-based assessment. Which means actually when the situation presented itself, institutions now had to be dynamic, had to innovate, and had to move to different ways of doing things. There are several other things that you shared, but I'm sure that our participants have engaged with the session and do have some questions that they want to probe further. So we would urge you to stay in sessions. If there are some that have been typed in the chat box, you would read them out. And if people want to talk, she would give them the opportunity to also speak and then ask questions, and we can all engage with it, either to you or to participants in general. It can be questions or it can be general contributions. So the floor is open now. I would like to call Ms. Irene Dufe Adai to moderate this session. Thank you. Dufe, if you are ready, please take over.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boama. And thank you very much, Felicia. It has been an insightful presentation. I was keenly following because we know the importance of technical and vocational education for development in every country. And so I have two questions in here, and I would want to ask Mrs. Sheila Boama that. It says, this is from Ms. Nodumo Lamini. It says, thank you for the excellent and informative presentation, Mrs. Sheila. Please comment briefly how you address issues of resistance to change, if there were any. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that change management processes would always be with us in any time, in any phase of our institutional life. There will be the need to engage people around the issues of change management. I also want to believe that if the environment is a trusting one, it's easier to deal with issues of change, because what would be the causes of resistance? Sometimes opportunity to hear out what is, just giving people opportunity to be part of a change process, especially people who are primarily affected by change, is a good way. Every day we manage change is not a perfect one. It depends on the context, and it depends on the drivers of change and what the intended outcomes are. But I think that overall, if it is done within an ambience of people would own it and be excited about it.
All right, Mrs. Boama. So there is this question by Dominique, and Dominique wants to know if there is any national policy regarding countrywide Wi-Fi or internet connectivity for these projects to take place all over the country.
I think that for the purposes of this presentation, I don't have an answer right now as to the capacity of wireless. I drive through University of Ghana every day because I don't live too far from there, and I am myself a student of the University of Ghana. I haven't experienced a wireless environment when I'm there, and it's one of the biggest and capable universities. So I would like to say possibly it's a work in progress, but it is something we must be mindful of to provide if our solutions are now dependent on wireless capabilities.
All right, Mrs. Boama. And so we are in for the for our speakers to ask their questions. So if you have any question, kindly raise your hands. If you raise your hands, and
the presenter was making a presentation, she talked about these rural communities in most of our countries, African countries especially. So I want to ask if AAU has something at stake in terms of a program or any program or policy or help that these universities in our communities that are not at the center in terms of connectivity, because the major issue here is connectivity. In our university that is even at the center, in the central city, at the city, the capital city of the state, we still find connectivity an issue. Talk more of other universities located outside the city state. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Nodumo, I don't know if you can hear me. If you can hear me, kindly unmute, and if you have an answer to the question that was asked. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Irene. I would like to congratulate you, Sheila, on that excellent presentation. Very, very informative. I understood the question to be touching on issues of connectivity and whether AAU was doing anything in this area. We've been doing something in this area since 2005. At one of the conferences of vice chancellors, rectors, and presidents of African universities, the issue was brought to the table, and then it was agreed that AAU works closely to support the establishment of national research and education networks. So national research and education networks are networks at a country level that are meant to operate as internet service providers for educational institutions in a particular country. Since 2005, a lot of countries have established national research and education networks. The challenge that we have, or we are seeing with these NRENs, as we call them, is that their speed of maturity is not similar. There are some countries that have achieved or been able to mentor, support their NRENs to a level that the NREN has effectively connected all the educational and research institutions in a country. There are countries where the NRENs have been established, but because of limited support from their governments, they've not been able to do much. There are countries that a few countries still don't have NRENs. So the idea is that educational and research institutions cannot buy internet at corporate rates because they are non-profit. They need special institutions to be able to provide them with internet, and that's what NRENs are for. So the challenge is really at a national level. I think we need to do more work, advocacy, education, ensuring that our governments are putting money towards infrastructure and also towards supporting the national research and education networks. So we are lobbying our vice chancellors who sit on our governing board and those who meet every 2 years to really support us in this area. During the COVID, we wrote very high-level statements targeting the governments particularly the ministries of education and ICT, and we sent out that communication to governments in Africa. We also did a very high-level statement with the regional research and education networks, appealing once again for this aspect of infrastructure to be prioritized. It's a big problem, but I think together we can solve it. Thank you very much, Irene.
Thank you, Ms. Nodumo Lamini. So this question is to Mrs. Sheila. It said, how did you act in regards to the practical part of the technical courses? Thank you. This is from Rafik, the American University in Cairo, School of Continuing Education.
Thank you very much, Rafik. Like I indicated, when the restrictions were lifted, the Governing Council of NAPTEX met, and one of the issues that was engaging their mind was how to supervise practical, or how to deploy the practical components of the higher national diploma within this environment. We were tasked to engage with the stakeholders, so we had a cross-section of consultation with some of the students affected. We engaged with the private university colleges that offer higher national diploma programs, and we engaged with the umbrella body for the technical universities. And there was a lot of information from these groups of people on where the gap was and how far they were or how close they were to the end of the semester. Based on all the consultations, we agreed that for the nature of the programs, you could not avoid the practical components. So for those that had to, for instance, the lab technicians that had to go on internship at industry, we expected that to still happen with close supervision and with observance of all the COVID protocols. Remember that these were the times when the lockdowns had been lifted, and so there was some amount of movement going on in Ghana. And for the assessment, we did not encourage or we did not accept multiple choice questions in the higher national diploma assessments. We would rather they did project-based assessments to demonstrate their knowledge rather than a multiple choice. So again, that was some of the decisions that were made after the consultation with the stakeholders. We just had to wait for the restrictions to be lifted for work to continue under supervision and in compliance. During the lockdown, some of the institutions tried to engage their candidates online. When we engaged with the students, many of them complained about access, connectivity, and all the cost of acquiring the equipment and what have you. So we just assumed that that was just adequate content to keep them going, but they were given opportunity after the restrictions to come and undergo the program as designed.
All right, thank you. So I'll take one or two comments from the panel, the panelists, and then this is what they say. From Engineer Hamzat, he said, why are African countries not paying attention to TVET when we want to develop technologically? And Dr. Ifeoma is saying this presentation is indeed insightful. I'm particularly interested in TVET. Thank you very much. This is from Dr. Joyce Okai. He said, communication skills as a subject in TVET is underemphasized, yet it is also a practical subject. How best can we encourage our students and teaching staff that it is a skill for the future? I think you can take this, Mrs. Sheila.
This is something that I touched on in my presentation, and it's something that exists in our current HND curriculum, except that we ourselves have noticed that there is some need for revision and improvement. And so I indicated that I want to believe that in terms of context across Africa, we are not very, very different, or we are not very far apart. And so some of my observations may be equally true for you in Nigeria or in Egypt and what have you. So after this experience.
All right, thank you. So Omojola Awosusi, you have your hands up. I am asking you to unmute. If you can see, kindly unmute and ask your question or make your submission. Omojola, thank you. You have the floor. Please go ahead.
So thank you very much. I'm Dr. Omojola Awosusi from retired university registrar. I want to start by congratulating AU on this 1 week anniversary. AU has imparted so much on the African universities. And since the advent of COVID-19, ordinary people in university system, particularly in Nigeria here, have benefited immensely from your interventions, particularly this regular webinar that you'll be holding. I want to thank you. I enjoyed the presentation of Sheila, and I want to commend her for that wonderful presentation. But in Nigeria, we have this ongoing controversy, or do I call it conflict, between certification in vocational and technical education. In Nigeria, 2 certificates are prepared by polytechnics. ND, National Diploma, you go into the polytechnic for 2 years, and you go into the industry for 1 year, come back for the other 2 years, and you obtain National Diploma. But the issue, theoretically, we say that the HND is equivalent to university degree. But in the industry, even in the public sector, the holders of these certificates are paid at a rate lower than the university graduates. The other issue is that they are no longer as competent as they used to be, because technical education has not been taken serious at the high school. So people assume that they are not as proficient as they used to be. That's even a different thing. I want to find out from Sheila, in Ghana, is there discrimination? Are you discriminating between graduates or universities and holders of these diploma degrees? And what happens in terms of, is there any differentiation in wages when they go into the industry? And finally, I want to find out, is there any, do you also think that their training is as effective as the training in the university system? Do you think that employing them and giving them jobs that you get more results? In the past in Nigeria, there are professions, or maybe some training in accounting system. Those who went through the technical education, they get satisfied in professional bodies faster than those who finish from university system. And then to register for maybe ICANN, History of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, or even current, that's Council for Registration of Any Practice. But it's no longer so now. But more importantly, that controversy is there, and it's affecting enrollment into higher institutions. In Nigeria in 2018-19, 1.8 million candidates took what we call the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination. Out of this, about 650,000 were admitted, and out of the 650,000, only 96,000 were admitted into the polytechnic system. And the college of education were even much they were lesser. Somebody now wants to go to higher institution. The first choice is that people want to go to university, and secondly, they want to go to polytechnic. Only few want to go to college of education. I want Sheda to look at it. The pipeline from this technical education, how is it in Ghana? Do candidates still want to go on with this training, and in what is the situation in the industry? I want to thank you for listening to me.
Let me start by emphasizing that you wanted, and some of these areas we are still looking at, my opinion, in comparison to what happens in Nigeria. I'm not very familiar with the Nigerian landscape, even though I've been to Nigeria before. But when you come to Ghana, I think that there is a clear distinction between the technical universities and the research-oriented universities. And maybe as stakeholders, we need to promote a lot more the differentiation and the value addition. So they are not the same. If somebody is trained as a technical person in a technical university, their training methodology makes them different from the research-oriented person. But these type of comparisons are there. In the private sector, my observation is that they are recruiting based on performance. And so you would find that we at NAPTEX, we are getting a lot of NAPTEX certificates coming back for validation from private sector employers who have employed them. So I think that the private sector person finds the HND holder cost effective. They also have said that their training turnaround time on the job is short assignment to achieve, but we are aware that these areas need to be improved, and we are consistently working with our partners who deliver the actual training to ensure that we deliver a certain quality. And we are very optimistic that if we get the quality issue right, the market would respond accordingly. Now, the market would respond because they consume the candidates. And if the candidates are performing to expectations we give them, it's a true mirror of their performance. There isn't any significant gap between the candidate's performance and the certificates that we issue out to the person.
Thank you, Mrs. Sheila. So there is this question from Professor Emeritus Pai Obanya. He wants to know how we should use this new normal as an opportunity to develop a favorable attitude towards TVET. So how would we as an institution use the new normal as an opportunity to develop a favorable attitude towards TVET? Thank you.
I thought that was a question for AAU.